As I think about Holy Week, one of the things that I appreciate the most about it is how it takes us on a journey, and it challenges our expectations and particularly our emotions. I've often reflected on Maundy Thursday about the different chairs that we're asked to sit in. We sit in one chair and have our feet washed, and then we change places to another chair and we wash someone else's feet. Depending upon our own internal wiring and how we feel about things, how shy we are, how germophobic we might be, how proud of our feet we are, and ultimately how comfortable we are being served, or even how comfortable we are serving others, we might be more or less comfortable in one chair or the other, or both chairs might challenge us equally, but in very different ways. And this started me thinking this week about all of the different perspectives or chairs that we're asked to inhabit during Holy Week. We start off on Palm Sunday with a roadside view of a triumphant and a glorious procession filled with hosannas. I think most of us imagine a beautiful sunny day. We see the waving palms. We can hear and experience the joy. But before we get too comfortable, we find ourselves sitting at a trial where we hear Jesus condemned. And before too long, we hear ourselves shouting from the mob, "Let him be crucified." And while our discomfort is growing, we move to Golgotha, where we witness Jesus' torture, crucifixion, and death. We then depart Palm Sunday in silence, feeling the weight and the grief of what's to come. Then on Maundy Thursday, we find ourselves seated at the table with Jesus, sharing a meal, and then experiencing the shock as Jesus washes the feet of the disciples. And then we find ourselves sitting in those two chairs, one where we wash and another where we are washed. And then today, we witness again the arrest, the trial, the torture, and the cross, and the crucifixion, as the gospel moves from scene to scene and from place to place. I ask you now to consider and to think about the chair in which you are sitting. If you've been at St. David's a while, you might imagine even a pew from historic church. It'll fit my exercise a little bit better. But I ask you to close your eyes if you like. Feel the seat underneath you, how it supports you and holds you. Think now of all the other people who have sat in this church in one version or another over the last 175 years. All the people who have seen the cross and sought shelter and home within these walls. Picture someone who is hungry, perhaps even homeless, and grateful for a free breakfast. Someone who is grieving the loss of a child, a spouse, a parent, or a friend at a funeral. Someone returning from a world war, or grieving someone who didn't return. Someone visiting the church for the first time. Someone returning to church after something wounded them and made them stop. Someone who is at church for the last time before they died or were just too frail to travel to church anymore. Someone who's struggling with sickness and seeking prayer and support. Someone celebrating a wedding. Parents who just saw their baby baptized. someone meeting with a priest for confession, or even just a regular Sunday worshiper. Picture 175 years of joy, celebration, triumph, and 175 years of suffering, grief, and consolation. 175 years of God walking with us through all the ups and downs of the human experience. 175 years of sacred space and holy encounters made possible by the sacrifice and the love that we witness this day. Good Friday and Holy Week can be dark and heavy and full of grief, because during it we recognize the pain and the suffering and the wounds that we see and experience in our own lives and in the world. We also acknowledge and are confronted with our own responsibility for the pain and suffering in the world. In this way, Holy Week exposes the full breadth of the human experience. I pray, however, that you also find comfort in the recognition that God claims and inhabits our full human experience during Holy Week. All of the pain and suffering and despair, and yes, all of the love and the joy and the triumph. Jesus experiences it all and lays it all upon the cross. This means that we can find God in the darkness and in the light. God with us in the darkness and in our suffering and in our wounds. And our entire human experience is brought onto the cross and into the tomb with Jesus. Our entire human experience enters the place where we are promised that new life and resurrection will spring forth. Today we take comfort in the knowledge that God can be found and felt and experienced even in the darkest depths. And we cling fast to the future promise that Jesus and we will rise again. Amen.